Well, welcome to the third RIEEE webinar in the fall of 2021. This is kind of our monthly habit to get together and connect with the campus. And this time, let's see, this time we are going to round out our series on kind of introducing the Institute and the centers to the campus. And letting people know sort of practically how they can work with us and why. And so this is going to be about tools and services to enhance mission-aligned research and funding pursuits. And we will, present a lot of different things, but then we'll also make time for you to give us some feedback and some food for thought about what would be most helpful for you. So first we'll go over the context of, what have we done so far and what is this fall series about and how this is rounding it out. And then we'll talk about 3 different categories of tools and services, kind of loosely grouped into best practice collaboration resources, consults, facilitated sessions, and proposal support materials. And for each of those, we'll have some examples that we'll share with you and tell you how you can get to them later. And then we'll have questions and discussion. Okay, let's see. So for the context of what we've done so far, you can find all of the prior webinars on our YouTube channel. We've been going through the why and the how and the what of RIEEE to give a baseline. We're looking forward to, in the coming semester, really digging in more to the topical areas of the research. Now that we've covered and kind of gotten these practicalities out there. And so we'll have topical seminars and kind of transdisciplinary focal points of interest there. But for now, we wanted to follow up on, we've done, kind of why RIEEE is here. That's the reintroduction of our institute and centers to the campus. And then we've done a couple of sessions on how we're using a working group approach to maximize our capacity building. And so there are 2 different webinars also available on the YouTube about that. And now we're kind of shifting over to the real tactical stuff of what specifically are examples of tools and services that we're bringing to teams. And I should say at the beginning of this, we wanted to present something that is cohesive and that gives you a sense of the types of things we're offering, but is by no means the end of the list. It's the beginning of a conversation. So if this sparks ideas, hopefully it will, of something that would be useful or some other kind of a service or tool, we're definitely open for that too. We want to be reactive as well. And so these are, you'll see throughout, we'll talk about, this is just a shared drive that is available for anyone in the App State community to enter into and use the tools. It is behind the App State firewall. We don't just want to share it with every university, although we're, generous with our collaborators. And if you have external collaborators, by all means, they can share with you and using it. But beyond this little screenshot, Grace will go over much more kind of details about how you would navigate to these things at the end. So with that, I'll just get into this first category of tools and resources, and they are all around best practice collaborations. My screen's over here, so that's why I'm weirdly looking. The main point here is that there is an evidence basis and several domain spaces and fields that we can draw on for collaboration practice that are, scientifically coming out of the science of team science community and the TDNet, which is transdisciplinarity in EU, that community. And so tools and evidence-based practices exist that can help support successful collaborations. And by drawing on these different tools, we hope to be this bridge to kind of bring them to teams. We understand completely people can't just dive into a whole new area of research. So we're trying to distill some of the most useful and commonly practical tools to apply in our teams. The second thing beyond this body of research or bodies are out there is that it's just true that intentional integration, planning across teams, whether they are multidisciplinary or just multi-people or multi-institutional or multi-sector. They can improve team function and individual satisfaction, which I hold of equal importance since that's what keeps us going in this world, and then strongly impact the actual outputs and elevate the profile of our research and the impact of our research. And example practices are in this textbook from 2019 called the Strategies for Team Science Success. It took like 4 or 5 years to publish, so all of us in there are like super proud of it. We always plug it. One of the chapters is in particular free. It is one of the things that's on our drive, and it's by Hall, Vogel, and Crouston, and it's comprehensive collaboration planning. So this came out of the NIH, and we draw on it pretty strongly. It summarizes about a 10-year body of research and practice on different approaches, and there's 10 steps involved. So this is just sort of for your knowledge. This chapter's out there. There's a lot of these practices. Anyone can go read it. And if you're leading a large effort or group, I recommend it. But also what we're doing is we're going to tell you some tools, tips, tricks type of stuff, templates that we've distilled from there to bring to teams that we work with. Some of these steps in the 10 steps in comprehensive collaboration planning take place before your team even forms. So I'll take a minute here to talk about my language here. So there's something in the science of team science. There's a difference between groups and teams. Groups are people that are all part of a same organization, and we might be rooting for each other and complementing each other and helping each other in a larger mission, but we aren't rowing toward the same exact, finish line. So I would say it's kind of like in a department. You might be teaching your own class. The whole department has to work together, but in the end, you're the one running your class. And so we want to set ourselves up to support working groups, which, the prior webinar goes into much more, but also project teams that might spin out of that group. So the working group that cares about something like atmospheric science is going to care about that and be interested generally. And then different subsets of that group might spin off into a particular team for one effort along the way. And so one of the benefits of working as a working group is that you can kind of engage in these pre-team formation steps that are best practice because you're already have this momentum of working together. Some of those are the first 3, which are, rationale for team approach. So who's on the team, what makes sense, what's the size and configuration for the opportunity at hand. And then a couple of diagnostics are out there to just kind of set the stage on collaboration readiness and the technological readiness that sometimes underpins that. And a lot of this is a little bit like relationship counseling, or it is that because you're getting a lot of expectations out in the open before you even set yourselves up to enter into the arrangement. And it is such a difference maker. So those are some categories of these. And then some of the comprehensive collaboration planning, then I would say like 4 through 10 really ends up translating into practices, not just planning, but then the practice. So we'll kind of shift to calling that collaboration planning and best practice and dig into some of the tools just to give you a flavor of what we have out there so far. Although, as I said, it's not limited to only those things. So the next stuff that I'll talk about is all going to be in support of team function, communication, leadership, conflict avoidance. A lot of those things blend together. So I'm not going to, take them out one by one. I'm just going to talk to you about the tools that can kind of hit on all of these things in 4 different categories for this. So operations manual, roles, responsibilities, outputs, expectations, and motivations matrices. That's a lot of words, but it really has helped in center level efforts that I've worked with. The earlier, the sooner upstream that you can get the team doing these activities, the more clearly everybody knows how to envision what they expect and why they're there. And so to that end, we have a couple of templates that are already out there that you can grab for your team. So this is just a shared Google Doc, and it's called Collaboration Planning Matrix. And a lot of people in different organizations have probably worked in roles and responsibilities matrix work. I strongly advocate for, even if you have this written, a lot of times you'll find somebody might say, oh, that's in the proposal, you can just look there. The point of this exercise is to get each individual to separately write in their name and what their subgroup is in the team, and then what their role-based responsibilities are and what their output products are. Because then the leader of the effort or the team, however the governance is set up, can see if that jives with what everybody else thought the person was. But it's important that the person is the origin for this to make sure that they're not just saying, yeah, that looks good when the leader puts it all in. So that's the advocacy I would add there. And then the next template on the same thing, it's a little different. We developed this to test it out for a recent larger effort, but beyond just the responsibilities, kind of going to the individual and saying, what's in it for me? And encourage the person to be selfish when they're saying this, because at the end of the day, no matter how much of a good collaborator you want to be, you're going to be faced with your own different obligations and your own balance in your life. So you have to be thinking, it's really useful to have the people on the team say, what's my personal motivation? What's the thing I want to get out of this? So in the example I put, I was saying, I want to make sure that App State gets to be in on this research to the extent that researchers want in on it. And it made me think, okay, that's actually my compass for involvement in this project. Then the impacts of that, if you can have them articulate the impacts. And again, these are only like 5 different questions. But then the next part is other contributions. So you can kind of see other synergies that might happen in the team. So you see above in the roles and responsibilities, we specified role-based responsibilities. But there may be other key strengths that you bring to the project. Maybe somebody's an amazing web designer. Maybe somebody has done a lot of outreach and has a really great K-12 activity or something. So these other contributions can help capture that. And if you do this at the outset, it makes everybody's buy-in go up, and it makes them feel like it was their idea because it was to commit to the things that they committed to. So the next thing is one of those things that can be so simple if you hit it off at the pass, or can get really hairy if you don't. And I'm sure we've all experienced this in some way. And this is just an example of authorship guidelines. Authorship is always better handled as clearly as possible, as soon as possible, I think, too. And so anyone can grab this off our website too. It's just general. It's honestly a compilation of a few different practices and guidelines that are out there that are just, these are the author roles. Anyone can change what those author roles mean, but it's great if the lead author has it out there specifically from the beginning. And then so that from the start of the engagement, people understand this is what I'll get. This can really be helpful as well with students, especially students who are paid hourly. And it might be important to specify at the beginning the tasks at hand within their contract, as well as separately, maybe the academic outputs that might be over and above that, but in a way that's not asking anyone to work for free. So just clarity is kindness in that one. Very similarly, I like to use team paper writing guidelines anytime I'm writing a big paper. And so we have a compilation of possible steps that you could take there too. Also in our shared folders of materials. And this is just, again, identifying the lead author, laying out a plan, the intent, the timeline of the draft, and then who is going to do what by when. And I've had so much more luck with this than, particularly in larger group papers, right? Than with hoping it works out or believing that I will stay organized. So this is another one of those practical examples. And then another best practice kind of example, we'll just kind of pull back the curtain on this meeting. We have some meeting templates and capture methods, just shared Google Docs, which sounds like it's not a technology really, but I have found a very big boost when people have introduced me to things like this, and then I use it in practice to my efficiency. So meeting template guides, here's one example called a run of show. And so this is the run of the show that we are in currently. And so again, the backstage look, this is what we look at. So Grace is looking at this right now, and in red, we can update the time. Oh, okay, somebody's going over. It's probably me every time. And then update the time so that we can keep aware of what's happening and know when to drop in links. This is this type of stuff that's, again, it's not rocket science, but it can make a big difference. And once you know it, you know it. So those are the types of tools, and we can add more, again, based on what's of most interest to folks. The next section is consults and facilitated sessions. For me, this might be the most fun, and I see Rebecca Witters on the call, and she has been a fantastic partner in with Grace and I, along with Dana Powell and folks with thinking about how we pilot these here at App. So there's many different types. I'm just going to categorize about 6. And these are sessions that we plan on. We will have to probably limit our investment in working groups that are active within RIEEE, and then faculty affiliates, people that work with us on grants, and people that are essentially co-investing with us in building RIEEE focused research capacity and successes on campus. Faculty affiliates does not currently have a formalized definition. The reason for that is that our institute and centers are going through our periodic comprehensive review this year. There are lots of different models for this, and we would like to take advantage of the intentionality to set up the type that is best aligned with what we're all trying to do. And that said, we welcome anybody who is a faculty member who would anticipate wanting to partner with us. We also welcome that input. We will have mechanisms down the road for formally asking for that too, but just wanted to say it's on our radar. So when we refer to that, it's a program that will exist. So these sessions are available to shape and pursue goals at multiple scales for folks that are basically part of the RIEEE family. These categories include vision and compass setting for either individuals and groups, strategic sequencing and approaches for building a multi-grant cycle success trajectory in an area, toward wherever you want to go. A couple types of structured facilitation. One is for project teams that are together and they think, okay, I know where I'm going, and now I want to win this particular grant. Could you all help me bring the co-writers together, or, at least the participants in the team together to distill our main aims. Then workshops, conferences, symposia, and then a couple different types of basically ad hoc sessions. So as needed, again, leaving room for some creativity on all sides, but researcher-driven sessions, and then sessions that might come up in the practical course of events on the RIEEE and maybe post-award side to figure out how we can grease the wheels to make everything, as Grace says, a frictionless plane of research, right? Or I think that's yours. You probably have something shorter and better. The first one is vision and compass setting. So this is really values-driven reflection and discussion. And it really brings, you want your core team of the working group that you don't mind also sharing your individual values and compass. The reason that's good is because a lot of times when you're in a core team, you still are an individual researcher. So it's really nice to have a time where you can articulate and actually make some distinctions between this is an us and this is a me thing. The outcome is that having this clarity helps with future decision-making and effort prioritization, because for a while, people are often in this cycle of saying yes to every opportunity. And then you quickly need to become able to filter and edit what you say yes to versus pull back from. So that's the goal of these compass setting sessions. And this is an example of a blank slate corkboard that we have used and enjoy using. So what are the values you really want with your long-term work? What are the attributes of that work, which is a little bit different? And then even more detailed, like what are the activities? I want to be doing social network analysis. I want to be doing field work, right? And so these are good things to have a session about. We usually do like about a 90-minute session with core groups to do this. Also, the reason we're saying this here is that if anybody wants to take this and do this on their own, we love that idea. So just everyone can use this as DIY or as facilitated as they like. Similarly, so the next step is really sequencing. So this is rather than a values-driven process, this is more alternatives-driven discussion and reflectivity. So you want to outline your tactical possibilities and with that compass in mind. So your outcome is you help identify next possible activities and then place them in an order and visualize the big success you would move toward in light of the compass that you've articulated. And so this is our blank slate template for that one, where we'll have people say, and people's brains start at different points in this. Some people, that's why they're not linear in this picture. Some people are, it's easier for them to, you know, do the Babe Ruth move and say, this is, I want to be the center director for some type of award I know exists. Other people, it's easier for them to visualize the momentum building steps. So we like to use, we like to be responsive to that and start in either direction, but build toward each other so that you can start to see the building blocks of what you'd want to do to go toward the vision for your research collaboration or your own personal trajectory that is best. Okay, so again, along the lines of these sort of practical, what do we have to work with and what should we do with that? I'm going to hit on something that has been, we have talked about a couple different times in these other webinars, which is the concept of research infrastructures. So these are infrastructures that enable us to do our research, right? So there can be physical, the way we've grouped them, which we learned from a convergence webinar that combined Department of Energy and NSF thinkers about what are convergence and success stories. So that's where we took these three categories from: social infrastructures and information and data infrastructures. So some examples of these on our campus. So to enhance the connected physical or the research infrastructures that are physical in nature, sorry. That would be, those are the easiest ones often to imagine. It's like a microscope, something you touch or use together, right? The Sustainable Development Farm, weather stations, Nexus facility. Social infrastructures also need to be connected. And so those can be like local government relationships, Indigenous community leaders, relationships that are in place that are, one, the trust is built, and two, the actual administrative pathways are built, which are often extremely non-trivial in their effort. So it represents, although sometimes people don't think of the social infrastructure that way, it also represents an investment and something that other people don't have that we can capitalize upon and carefully use, right? And then information and data infrastructures, same criteria. Not everyone can use them. We have invested in them and they represent an asset. So we've got a lot of good examples: CDAC, Apple Air, App Aqua, many others on campus as well. So this is what that translates to. We advocate working groups use this template to try to think out, what are their infrastructures in these different categories? Who are the contacts? And there are other categories you can add, like what are the vulnerabilities of this? What are the risks of this? Particularly in this, in a microscope, you're like, I don't want to. I don't want everyone to use my ICP-MS because they might clog it with a dirty sample, or I don't want everyone to reach out to my social network because I have cultivated that relationship very carefully. So thinking through all of the ones that you have and all the ones that your working group needs, we share this template widely, but then we also are happy to have a session about this to talk through it. So if you come back and think about, okay, project one might have a particular research infrastructure map. This is what they have. I left out that on the last one, we also ask people to fill out the ones that they need. So once you've thought through what you have, the ingredients you have, then when you're like, oh, but I want to make this awesome dish, but I'm missing like the saffron or whatever, it's always going to be the most expensive one, of course, but actually not always, right? Sometimes you just need to get one extra thing. And so it helps you think out what you have, but then also what you need. So first project, looks like this. And if we just tip it on its side like that, then we can say, okay, let's think about the second one might have its own map of different social or physical and information infrastructures, and same with the third. And so we talk about the term convergence platforms when we see that when working across multiple working groups or efforts, that multiple projects might rely on and contribute to one of these shared research infrastructures in a way that reinforces each other. So this is easiest to think about. We put it in the physical side because if you think, oh, tons of people are going out to the farm and they need this, or Grace and I are both working right now so that RIEEE can support the Vice Provost for Research and ITS on looking at research needs in the IT and cyber infrastructure area. So what is going to, get the most bang for the buck type of thing. And so these shared research infrastructures mutually reinforce each other and might give an idea of where more investment is needed, where complementary things that already might exist, and other things that might be possible to elevate the visibility even for more funding of something that is useful in multiple arenas. This could also be the case for, of course, information and data infrastructure and social infrastructures. And another example, besides a convergence platform across all of them when everybody can use this thing, might just be leveraged research infrastructure. So once we take this inventory and people are starting to become familiar with this idea, then we can kind of name places where there could be benefit on one project from an existing infrastructure in another area. So for example, many different people have come to us recently with, I'll use the example again of Indigenous relationships. And so where that might be a really important outreach or, co-creator of knowledge in one project, it could actually then, once we learn about it, plug in really well to benefit another project. So this is the reason behind those type of infrastructure sessions. So the consults and facilitated sessions that are about structured events are these two. And so usually for a project team that wants to distill their aims for a proposal, for example, we would do a 90-minute session using something called a pseudo-nominal group technique, which sounds fancy, is publishable, so we can share the reference, but really it's a timed round robin with a focused way to capture everybody's ideas. And that's been really successful with several efforts that I've had a chance to work with. Then the other one is a broader range. So the co-design and facilitation of workshops. Personally, I have done this a lot. I used to do this as a kind of a consulting gig on the side because I had the opportunity to do it for several NSF centers and National Nanotechnology Coordination Office meetings where you're bringing together tons of different groups. They all care about different things, but they are trying to lay out a research agenda. And so that's one direction we could take it. It could be much more targeted if somebody already knows their research agenda and they're trying to kind of plant the flag for app state in a certain sweet spot. So we can do this kind of thing. And 1 to 2 day. Lots of times I think there are opportunities that can be missed often to have an event that sort of at the same time captures the value so that you're designing it to generate outputs you can then publish. I know this happens a lot, but other times it would just be, you're just like almost right there. So we can help with templates and designs for that. And there is a resource on our website about this. This is a brainstorming guide for sort of step 1. If you are thinking about a workshop, we recommend you kind of go through this exercise to think about the goals and what your outputs might be. So that's a kind of example of the DIY level with that one. And then these other 2 customized types of sessions are really driven by either the researcher. So you come to us and you say, hey, I need somebody to bounce this off of. Could y'all help me think through this? Sure. And this is, again, you know, as we formalize our affiliates program, we may have to, depending on our bandwidth, go in, you know, with preference for that, but we are not at that point yet. So anyone reach out and we'll get there when we get there. So anything people want to talk about in one of those custom sessions that might be helpful from collaboration standpoint or team or research planning. And then opportunistic needs. So basically this is things that we might notice that are becoming difficult for people, or that, you know, a one-off issue that they're finding as a sticking point, then we can meet and address those specific questions to help our IEEE research grow that way. I should say in these 2 that we always make sure that we are really closely connected with the Office of Research and the different groups there, so that we're not ever doing something that is separate from, we're always doing something that's complementary to or partnering with them. So then, oh, that's the wrong title. That's from a prior webinar. So, but we are still talking about tools and resources. I will move on to pass it to Grace, who's going to talk about proposal support materials.
Thanks, Christine. So RIEEE has helped to different extents in the past with proposal support. We are working now to try to make that a little bit more structured and formalize and kind of develop standard operating procedures and things like that, so that we can react to what we hope is a growing volume of requests for this kind of support. So it's just basically some tools and templates, but then also shepherding or support, more hands-on support from me at this time, to help you prepare and submit external funding proposals. And I also want to point out there's been a misconception, I think, at times, that we might work separate from the Office of Research and sponsor programs or in parallel, but we are always working in conjunction with them and trying to complement and enhance where we can. We're also trying to define, and these aren't rules necessarily, but just trying to define when it is something rises to the level of RIEEE providing especially hands-on support for proposal submission. We're certainly thinking that any RIEEE supported working groups or affiliates, Christine mentioned earlier that we intend to formalize an affiliates program after our periodic comprehensive review. Any proposal that's led by, obviously, Christine or any of the center directors, and then if there's some purpose, size, or complexity to a proposal that we would jump in and help, if it's developing or expanding a convergence platform, if there are multiple investigators, if it's a larger budget, things of that sort. And then, of course, proposal submission is always can be tricky when we're really close to a deadline. So when we're at a point where trying to engage and we haven't been a part of something further upstream, and it might become a little bit more difficult to bring another party to the table, basically, we might just be relatively hands-off, provide some templates, that sort of thing. But the level of service, I guess, that we're willing and able to offer also depends on the runway that we have before a deadline. Some of the things that once a project is, we are supporting it, there's some things that you could just request. If you are interested in a particular program, then maybe requesting another eye on the RFP or the solicitation to run through and kind of look, what are the particulars about this program that my project might be competitive for, or sometimes would make it less competitive. And then some proposal support like checklists and templates and tools. So I think, Christine, if you could go to the next. One of the things that we have in that drive, that folder that I shared a link to earlier, is a shell of a proposal prep folder. So you can just copy the whole thing, and it has these subfolders in it. It has a log to try to keep track of the back and forth instead of in an inbox with sponsor program staff, myself, and co-PIs. You can tag and comment and respond in a proposal log. There's also a checklist there to assign different parts of proposal components basically to different individuals. And if part of that deep dive into the RFP, once the go decision has been made, then I would build that checklist for you based on the guidelines. So this checklist is, this is all just templatized right now, so it's very generic, but we would add a lot more details if there's formatting restrictions, page limits, particular things to note. We can assign, and the second tab on here has, we're changing to Caillou soon, but right now it's A grants, the different parts of the A grants record, and is it ready to go? What needs to be changed? Who's responsible for that? Things of that sort. And the shepherding service, I would just say quickly, is just kind of having some of my time basically to help keep the thing moving, to check in if we've agreed on a calendar, a writing calendar, then taking some of that responsibility to just ping someone when we're approaching a deadline. Do we have these materials and are they in the drive, or checking on status, things of that sort. And then I've dropped a few links into the chat already today. One of those was a link to this folder that right now holds all of the shortcuts to all the materials. And we're also developing, actually, if you could, I think I have an image, if you'll go to the next, Christine. So this is set, the shared folder is set for view access for everyone in the App State domain. So you should be able to copy everything that's there and take it and do with it what you need. We're also working on some content and more user interface sort of entry points and guidance that we'll put onto our website, so that you can kind of, we're envisioning something kind of like a mall map, like where are you in conceptualization, and then be able to drill down onto resources that are going to help you pick up from wherever you are in that whole spectrum of collaboration planning that Christine talked about early on, through teaming toward a particular proposal and pick, wherever you are in that trajectory. And then if you're like me, you lose things when they're shared drives that you don't own, or they're shared with you, that sort of thing. And I just wanted to point out quickly that if you navigate to the, I'll put it in the chat again, the RIEEE Research Support Resources folder, you can right click on that and add it to your own, add a shortcut to your own drive, and then organize that shortcut however you like. That makes it convenient to go back and find these materials. But in the near future, we will have an interface on our website for you to be able to find and engage with these materials too. And I think that's all I had here. Oh, and Christine, thank you. Just put the link into the chat.
Thanks so much, Grace. So that's actually all we have planned for talking to you. The rest of this, I think we will just open it up for questions and discussions. I think thanks for anybody that watched this, and we can end the recording part here.